Cek, cek. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Karena seperti itu,
Jadiin saya host, co-host. Tes.
Cek. Assalamualaikum. Oke. Assalamualaikum. Oke. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke. Cek. Masuk udah. Oke, YouTube-nya apa, Kak?
Ladies and gentlemen, the invitee, committee, and all virtual participants have a seat because today's agenda will be start. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Participants have a seat. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, the invitee, committee, and all honorable participants, please have a seat because today's agenda will be start. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, respectable Head of Mathematics Department of Malang State University, Mr. Latifatul Anwar, SSI, MSc, PhD, Honorable Guest Lecturer of Guest Lecture Educational Research Methodology, Professor Peter Grootenboer, Honorable all of the lecturer, and Honorable all of the committee, invitee, students, and participants of Guest Lecture Educational Research Methodology. Good morning. First of all, let's us pray and thanks to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. our beloved God, who has given us mercies and blessings so we can attend this agenda. Peace be upon Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who has guided human life from the distraction into the realm of Islam. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a precious change for me to be master of ceremony in this morning on Tuesday, 8th of August 2023 at Anjida Guest Lecture Educational Research Methodology. We gather here today for a momentous occasion as we have the privilege of hosting a distinguished guest lecture by Professor Peter Grootenboer. Before we proceed, I would like to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you. Your presence here today is a testament to your commitment to knowledge and your eagerness to learn from the best in the field. With the honorable guest lecturer from Griffith University, Australia, Professor Peter Grootenboer, whose expertise and contribution in mathematics have earned the widespread acclaim and recognition. It is indeed a privilege to have them here today to share their valuable insights and knowledge with us. But before that, we are honored to have with us the head of Mathematics Department, Mr. Latiful Anwar, SSI, MSc, PhD, who would like to extend their greetings and share a few words with us. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Latiful Anwar.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. The Honorable Speaker, Professor Peter Grootenboer, and all participants who attend the lecture in person or online. It is with great pleasure and enthusiasm that we gather here today to welcome a truly eminent scholar in the field of mathematics education. We are honored to have Professor Peter Grootenboer from Griffith University, Australia, who will enlighten us on the fascinating realm of methodological research in mathematics education. Professor Grootenboer's extensive expertise and profound contribution to the field have left an indelible mark on how we perceive and approach the teaching and learning of mathematics. His dedication to unraveling the complexities of effective methodologies in mathematics education have deepened our understanding and paved the way for innovative and impactful pedagogical practices. Throughout his distinguished career, Professor Grootenboer has tirelessly pursued a vision of enhancing mathematical literacy and nurturing a love for the subject among students of all ages. His pioneering work has redefined the boundaries of what is possible in the realm of mathematical education, guiding educators and researchers alike to refine their method and techniques. Today's guest lecture promises to be an enlightening journey into the intricacies of methodological research in mathematics education. Professor Grootenboer's insight will undoubtedly inspire us to explore new avenue of inquiry, to question existing paradigm, and to strive for excellency in imparting mathematical knowledge. As we eagerly await Professor Grootenboer's discourse, let us reflect on the transformative power of his work and its profound impact on shaping the future of mathematics education. His presence here today is a testament to the global nature of academic collaboration and the pursuit of knowledge that knows no bounds. So without further ado, let us extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to Professor Peter Grootenboer. We are honored to have you here with us, and we eagerly anticipate the insight you will share during the enlightening journey through methodological research in mathematics education. Thank you. I wish you all a fruitful and enlightening guest lecture on methodological research on mathematics education. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Latiful Anwar, SSI, MSc, PhD, for those inspiring words. We appreciate your support and encouragement as we embark on this enlightening journey. And we would like to give our best gratitude and thankfulness to Mathematics Department of Malang State University or Departemen Matematika Universitas Negeri Malang for holding this wonderful guest lecture. Today, we are fortunate to have Professor Peter Grootenboer grace our institution with their presence and share with their wealth of experience and expertise. The insights they will impart today will undoubtedly be invaluable to all of us present here. He has graciously accepted our invitation to share his expertise and insight with us today. I encourage you all to make the most of this opportunity by actively engaging with our esteemed guests. Pose thoughtful questions, share your perspective, and let us collectively observe the wisdom that Professor Peter Grootenboer brings to us today. I kindly request everyone to give their undivided attention and make the most of this incredible learning opportunity. Professor Peter Grootenboer will now take the stage and deliver a captivating lecture that will undoubtedly broaden our horizons and deepen our understanding of today's lecture topic. And he will be accompanied by one of the greatest lecturers of Mathematics Department, Ms. Latifah Mustafa Lestianto, SSI MBD, as the moderator for the next session. Please take your time.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Prof. Peter. I will explain presentation. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to all participants, the head of Mathematics Department, Latiful Anwar, PhD, and staff, the Honorable Guest Lecturer, Professor Peter Grootenboer, and honorable participants. Welcome to the guest lecture held by Mathematics Department of Universitas Negeri Malang. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Latifah, and I am the moderator of this lecture. You'll be hearing a lecture from Professor Peter Grootenboer. Before we get started, please let me explain about how the presentation will go. First, I would like to give the time to Professor Peter Grootenboer to present the material for about 60 minutes. And there will be about 30 minutes for the Q&A session. Without further ado, now allow me to welcome Professor Peter Grootenboer, who will be speaking to us about the practice of mathematics. Professor Peter Grootenboer, the floor is yours.
Is it okay to send here? Yeah. First of all, thank you for your welcome. Thank you. You keep saying a guest lecturer, but I'm actually an adjunct member of your faculty. So I am here as a visitor from overseas, but also, I think, anyway, as one of you. I have my white shirt on today, so I look like I'm part of your department. So this is my second visit to Malang. It should have been my fourth visit, but of course, COVID got in the way. But we have plans to work together. We've been talking already with your head of department about ways we can work together. So I don't feel like I'm coming as just a guest. I'm also coming as a local. And it's very good to be back. So what I want to talk a bit about today is, I didn't want to just give you a safe talk and tell you what we've been doing or what you could do. I wanted to show you how we've been doing something. And so part of the question is about research methods and methodologies. And so I want to show you how they fit here. And what you might see is, in fact, we don't talk much about research methods and methodologies till the end. So there is a time for Q&A. Every time I've asked about how long this goes, I get a different answer. So if I'm getting too long, just say stop. Or if you're bored, you can tell me to stop. Or if I'm telling you something you already know, you can say move on. Also, these slides I've also handed over. So if you want a copy of these, you're more than welcome to have them. But if you have a question as we go, I'm happy for you to stop and ask the question. And for those of you online, you might put it on the chat and someone might read it out. Is that okay? Yep. Also, by the way, tomorrow I'm talking about publications somewhere. I don't know if any of you are coming to that. And then on Thursday, I'm talking at the conference. So this is a bit related to what I'm doing at the conference. So this is a rough outline of what I want to do today. And some of it might make more sense once you see me. Oh, we've got the wrong way. So I want to start with how we started on a big project a long time ago. And that's what we talk about, the primacy of practice. Now, by practice, I don't mean like sports practice. I mean practices in what we do every day. So we would say we live our lives in practices as we interact with each other in space. So here we're having the practice of a seminar. I don't know if it's a word you use commonly here, but it's a word we use commonly, particularly in universities. So we talk about practices, and often you'll hear about best practice. So taking a practice view is what we call an ontological view, which means we give precedence to what's actually happening. And part of that comes about because when we interact with each other, when we live our lives, we don't live it in our head, we live it out in real life. And that includes mathematics and mathematics education and mathematics education research. So when we want to understand about mathematics education, we want to understand how it happens more than necessarily what's in the teacher's head or the student's head. So this is why we've taken what we've called a practice view, which we call an ontological perspective. Now, taking an ontological perspective is different from most research, if you're considering research, because most research is what we would call epistemological. It's about what's happening in people's head, what they think, what they believe. So part of our rationale for this is we don't actually know what people think and believe unless they tell us. So let's just look at what they do. Oh, gone the wrong way, sorry. So why would we do this? Well, the first thing is, particularly about mathematics education. My background is in mathematics education, not mathematics research per se. I know some of you are mathematicians here, but in mathematics education, or if you're a mathematician, what happens is what you do unfolds in time and space. We are having a seminar now, and it is happening here. And for some of you, it's happening online. As it happens, we can't actually undo it. If I say something, I can't put it back in my mouth. What you are experiencing and what I'm experiencing is what happens. And this is influenced by what I think, but you're not interacting with what I think. You're only interacting with what I've said in this seminar. And hopefully that's got something to do with what I think as well. Does that make sense? You can only interact with what's happened in the space between us. Okay. Now we know that mathematics is also a practice. So if you're a mathematician, you just can't sit in your office and think thoughts. You have to do something. It would be nice if you got paid just to sit and think, but we have to actually do something. And if you do think deep thoughts, you at least have to write them down and share them with other people. You can't just sit there and think. We all have to do something. We all have to practice. And so this is the reason we've taken this approach is for so long we take a cognitivist approach. What do students think? What do they believe? All of our education assessment is we do assessment and then we talk about mathematics, what they know. But we actually don't know what they know. We only know what they practice. So that's why we took this approach to this problem. All right, now for most of you, I'm imagining this isn't something you haven't thought about before. For us, this was something we hadn't thought about before, but it was something we were very worried about because we'd been going into schools and university mathematics classrooms and other classrooms for a long time. And we were worried that we didn't understand what was actually being happened. So that's why we started to investigate mathematics as a practice. Now, I'm sorry if this is a pretty quick overview, but we'll get to the point. Go. Okay. Now, from that, we did a study, and I did it with some of my colleagues. It was a large-scale study. It was over 4 years. And those 4 years, we went into the classrooms, or many, many classrooms, and we were watching what was happening when people were learning. We collected a lot of data about what was happening in those classrooms. This happened to be in school classrooms, but this project was funded by the government, and from it we wrote that book you can see there. Now, don't buy the book, it's too expensive, but maybe your library has it. If you can't find it and you're really interested, let me know and I'll send you a PDF. Just don't tell the publishers. But the reason we got involved in this is we were really worried about a big problem, which is why the problem was, why are schools struggling to enable meaningful learning? We felt that the school system was just about schooling rather than about education. Kids go to school, they learn things at school, we assess them at school, we report on what they do at school, but it didn't seem to have any connection with what they did outside of school. So the argument is, if you're just educating students to do well at school, what's the point? We want to set them up for school for things outside of school. So from that, we did a lot of data collection. We engaged in a lot of research. The research design was about what was happening in schools rather than what we thought people were thinking. And then from that, we wrote a theory called the Theory of Practice Architectures in this book. And incidentally, for those of you who are doing publications, we wrote the theory in this book after we got all the empirical data. And now the theory this book has about 4,000 citations. So I've written 8 books now, and this one has 80% of my citations. So if you're publishing, don't be too worried if one of them doesn't get too many citations. Just publish another one. You'll find one sooner or later. I'm going to tell the others tomorrow in the publication thing too. When I went through school, I did not read any books and I didn't write any essays. And now all I do is read books and write books and essays. So if I could do it, anyone can do it. I was too busy playing sport to read. That's another point. So this is the theory of practice architectures, a real short version.
Kanan di. Ya Allah, saya kuliah iki loh.
That's okay. So what we say is practices are made up of sayings, doings, and relatings. I'm guessing most of you haven't read much sociology, so this will be relatively new to you, but if you're more interested, you can read it. But what happens is we get caught up doing something, and in that doing, it's made up of sayings. All right, I'm talking to, for the practice of the seminar, I'm talking to you, I'm doing something, I'm holding the microphone, you're sitting down, making notes, taking photos, and we're relating to each other in certain ways. All right, you're sitting there listening like you're interested. I'm standing up. I'm not standing real close to you. There's ways we relate to each other. And that makes the seminar happen. But these things are enabled and constrained by certain practice architectures. So in this case, we'd say the cultural discursive arrangements. All right, I can talk to you because you understand some English. But it's also constrained because English is not your first language, and I don't know any Indonesian other than terima kasih and nasi goreng. So the language, the cultural discursive arrangements enable us to say some things. Some of the words I'm using, even like practices, might be quite new to you, so therefore the understanding is a bit limited, but it's enabled in some way. We also have material economic arrangements. Someone has given us this room, we have the equipment to do the live streaming, we have microphones and things that help us do it, material arrangements. And we have social and political arrangements. In other words, you understand that because they call me a professor from Australia, that you should be respectful. Even if you think what I'm saying is complete rubbish, you would just always say that was very good. We have conditions that constrain how we are going to be socially together. That's a real short version of the theory. Theory is used a lot to underpin our research. Oops, wrong way. Now, this theory is not brand new. If those of you who understand history a little bit, or to history, the ideas of sayings, doings, and relatings relate to the ancient Greeks. So if you've read Aristotle, those sorts of things, he talked about thinking well, acting well, and relating well to others. Right, so it's been around for a long time. Anyone familiar with Bloom's taxonomy? Yeah. So Bloom's had 3 taxonomies: the cognitive domain, the psychomotor domain, and the affective domain. Right? Still the same as saying, doing, or relating. If any of you are familiar with Bourdieu, I'm guessing in a maths department there's no sociologists here. Anyway, 2 other sociological theorists also have similar things. So when we came up with the theory, we did come up from the empirical data, but also because we'd read a lot of things before as well. We didn't come up with something brand new that had never been seen before. We just advanced the field a little bit by pulling things together. And the thing is, these things work together. So as we're doing the seminar, we are engaged in the practice unfolds and is shaped by the arrangements we have. But as we have these arrangements are also shaped back and forth. All right, so now, because we've gone a little bit through the seminar, you can understand a little bit more because you now have some of the language. So the arrangements for the seminar have changed. I'm not going to go too long on this because this would take the whole time to explain. So in this sense, when we come to do something, what we call practice architectures prefigure what's possible. They don't predetermine, but they prefigure. So there's some things that are possible here amongst these conditions we are. Okay. So you can sit and listen, you can probably have a little sleep if you wanted to, you can make some notes, you can do something, but you can't stand up and start talking. All right, so some things are possible, some things aren't. For me, I can talk in English, I can click the slides, but I couldn't just walk out. Or I couldn't talk to you about volleyball or badminton, even though those are very interesting topics for me. So in this sense, what's possible is always shaped by what's around us. And if we want to improve mathematics education, we have to try and improve the conditions that enable what's possible, which then relates to how we would research those things. All right. So the other thing this means is important. If we're shaped by the arrangements, it means what happens is local. Where it happens is important. So this lecture is happening here. If I did this lecture in my hometown on the Gold Coast, it would be different. If I did this in the science department, it would be different. It's only possible in this place. And when we think about education research, particularly mathematics education research, one of the problems we have is every time we research it in America or somewhere, and then we assume that's the answer and we bring it back to other places. So one of the things for us here in Malang, I think is very important when we do mathematics education research, is we try and do it here. And even if you've got a scholarship to go to Ireland or Japan or somewhere else, Netherlands, I hope you collect your data here. Because we need to understand how maths happens, mathematics education happens here. Because it is not the same as how it happens in Australia, it's not the same as America, it's not the same as Bali, and it's not the same as Jakarta. So understanding how it unfolds, how it is practiced in this place is very important. And I was just talking yesterday with Haberdin and his secretary about this, and what I thought was really important is they all went overseas to do their PhDs, which can be a good idea, but they collected their data here. Because in the end, I don't care if maths education improves in Ireland or Australia, I want it to get better here. This is where I am. This is what's in my hands to work with. So where it happens is important. And when we talk about it, we talk about learning in context. It's more than a context. It's not just like a container that happens. Where it happens is also part of what's possible. Because even in a different classroom, you have a different teacher with different students who bring different things. And so different things are possible. Which is why we need to understand mathematics education. Not just because this is a context where we try and do something that they've discovered somewhere else. It's because it happens here, it's different and needs different things. So sometimes we think all the answers are overseas, and they never are. We buy the book from the guru from overseas, and we think, yes, if we only do this thing, everything will be good, and it never works. Okay, so in maths education in Australia, at the moment, we think someone called Peter Lilydale from Canada is wonderful. He's written a book. Everyone buys the book, and then they do what it says, because he says this is the answer. Guess what? Doesn't work. So we buy the next book. We're always looking for some guru elsewhere. This is why it's important for me that I'm not just Peter from Australia bringing you the answer. I am part of this place, albeit not in the same way that you are, but I want to improve mathematics education and mathematics education research here. All right, so given we're all interested in mathematics, I wanted to ask you some very simple questions that you will all be able to answer, because this is very important to you. Yeah? So I'm going to ask you to do something. What do you think mathematics is? If anyone in Malang should know the answer to this, you should know, because you are the mathematics department. Yeah? What would you say? You don't have to tell me. You can tell the person next to you or behind you. You've committed your whole lives to this. It must be important.
Okay, please introduce myself. My name is Sadrak. I'm from Musamus University from Papua. I'm attend this seminar just read on Instagram. For me, mathematics is about science, about pattern and order. So if we look something in nature is order and have a pattern, I think it's about mathematics. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, you don't have to answer today, but I think this is a question that you could ask in your mathematics department meeting, because it should be, this is what we are doing. This is what we have dedicated our lives to. So it's worth thinking about. And sometimes I think that important things get missed out because we just assume we know what it is. Okay. Well, I'll ask you an easier question. Oh, here's some definitions I got from the internet. Dr. Google, all the answers are there. It said it's the abstract science of number, quantity, and space. It's the science of structure, order, and relation that has evolved from elemental practices of counting, measuring, and describing the shapes of objects. Right, so there's some definitions from. What do you think people would say if you went to the local shopping centre and said, what is mathematics? Numbers, they would say it's numbers, right? Like we've never done geometry before. Okay. So the question is, why have you dedicated your whole life to mathematics? If you're here, you have dedicated your life to this. This must be very important. I mean, I know why I did it. I was good at it at school. I did well on the tests, so I thought this will be easy, I'll do this. I didn't learn to actually appreciate it till I studied it at university. Again, you don't have to answer now, but the other question is, if you think all these things about mathematics, if you think it's interesting, worth pursuing, beautiful, exciting, then how is what you do consistent with these things? Because if we take a practice approach, I'm more interested in what you do and how you practice than what you say. Right? When I go to schools, every teacher I talk to says maths is interesting and exciting. And then when I watch them teach, it is never interesting or exciting. So what's more important? What they practice, not what they say. And they're not being disingenuous, it's just that's the way we separate things. So I want to be more consistent with what we do. Oh, is that important? Okay. So mathematics, is it important and why? If the government said, we are no longer funding mathematics departments in universities, what would you fight up and say? Yes, you must fund it because I need a job. Could you justify why we need to exist? Could I say, now with AI and computers, machines can do all the mathematics. We don't need mathematicians. Machine can do it. It's like having people who used to do horses so we could get around. We don't need people to do horses anymore because I have a car. Or in Indonesia, I have a motorbike. Should Indonesia care about it? Should they care? And what has mathematics got to offer your students here at the university and in your schools? Because when you finish learning mathematics, when it's at school or at university, I want them to be excited and say, this is something I really think is important. All right. Two deeper questions to talk about for just. So I'll give you a practice view of mathematics. One of the reasons. This is some of the new work we're trying to do. We don't have the answer yet. This is the research we're trying to do. So for our perspective, mathematics is a human endeavor. It's something that people do, and it's undertaken in lots of different ways, in different places. And that way people have a richer understanding of mathematics and the world about it, more than just something that's in their head. So in Australia, we have Indigenous people, Aboriginal people who live out in the a lot of them live out in the desert. They have existed there for many thousands of years and done all sorts of things. But amongst other things, they're very good at navigating. And yet, when we give them a test in a school, it says they have no spatial reasoning at all. So we have to acknowledge the mathematics in their side. It doesn't matter if they can read a compass or not because they haven't got a compass. But it does matter that they can look at the stars in the sky and work out where to go. So they do mathematics. Mathematics is something you do. And you may have to know something as well. I'm sure you do have to know something. But mathematics is actually something you engage in and you do. And sometimes we come to understandings about things, we're going to argue about them as well. But is 1 + 2 always equal 3? No, only based on arithmetic. But it's more than just what's in your head. So even if you're a pure mathematician with no applications at all, you still have to do something. You still have to do proof. You still have to engage in furthering mathematical ideas. That's still something you do. It's not just in your head. And that means that all that mathematics is site-based. It happens somewhere at some time. And if you've read whoever your famous mathematical historian, if you look at calculus, lots of interesting things about calculus, but one of the most interesting things is it happened in 2 places at the same time. Right? Leibniz and Newton both invented calculus at the same time in different places. That's interesting. How did they come up with the ideas? Under different circumstances. How did we invent Fibonacci sequence? Well, we looked at something in a particular place and time, and then we found all these connections after. Anyway. So in terms of Okay. So in terms of a practicing mathematics involves talking and thinking mathematics. All right. So question, if you go to any mathematics classroom at university or at school, how much talking is happening? Probably a lot, but who's talking? The teacher. Who's learning? Probably the teacher. All right, it's about doing mathematical things. Right, and that doesn't just mean writing things down. Sometimes to do mathematical things, we might want to move around in space. Right. What have we done to geometry and spatial reasoning in schools? Well, we reduced it all to something that happens on a piece of paper. How do you learn to move around and understand space, direction, if you're only ever looking at what's on a piece of paper? Just a thought. And we relate to others and mathematical objects. So there's some methods we use that are pretty standard and we accept and understand. All right, how can we talk to each other and think mathematically? Well, we've got mathematical language and symbols that we all understand. And one of the beauties of mathematics is those symbols are the same whether you speak English, Indonesian, Japanese, or Russian. They're the same, mostly the same. That's one of the powerful things about mathematics. We use equipment and physical time and space. Right? Most of us got a computer now. Back when look how young you all are. When I went to university, we did computing. And we had to get cards out and punch holes in them. It took us hours to program something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And there's norms of relating to others in mathematical traditions. Right? When you do your proof, there's ways you'll write it out that everyone understands. There's no reason for it, it's a standard way of doing it. All right. When you put all those things together, when we do mathematics together, we become a community of practice where we sharpen each other up. If anyone wants these, you're more than welcome to have them. Does anyone know Hans Grootenboer? Very famous maths educator from the Netherlands. realistic mathematics education. He started and also continued on by someone. I met him. He said, mathematics as an activity is a point of view quite distinct from mathematics as printed in books and imprinted in minds. To be sure, mathematics is a precious treasure chest of tools, precious for those who can put to good use. And what's the problem? Most kids finish school, they can't put it to good use because they've learned at school not to be able to do it, and therefore it is known. They say this is useless. Because mostly it comes in a printed book. So if you're doing mathematics, what might you be doing if you're practicing mathematics? All right, this is what I said a while back. This is in a different book. To develop mathematics curricula, we want to prepare and equip individuals and society to solve problems, to reason and communicate mathematically, to model situations mathematically, and be able to critique the veracity and fairness of mathematical claims. That is, to practice mathematics. Now, for us, at least in Australia, where did this come to the fore? During COVID. All right, because all of a sudden we had things like politicians saying, oh, we need to flatten the curve. And everyone's going, yeah, we need to flatten the curve. What? And they all agreed with it, but they had no idea what curve they were talking about. In mathematical terms, were they talking about the normal distribution curve? Were they talking about an exponential curve? When they want to flatten it, what did they mean? But everyone used this mathematical term and no one understood what it meant. Yeah, I don't know if you had that one. We had things saying, in a room, you could only have 50 people. You had to have 5 square meters per person, or something like that. Right? So I could have 50 people in this room and we could all stand in the corner. That was okay, as long as we had 5, even if no one was here. So all these mathematical terms, no one understood the mathematics behind it, and therefore a lot of the politics around it was quite dubious, and politicians and the media would use it to make claims about something which was quite wrong. Did it happen in Indonesia as well? Yes. Okay. So some people call that numeracy or mathematical literacy. All right. So that's everyday things at school. What about at universities? So this is what some research about universities found about their practice. This is what they do. Leonie Bird, she was from England. She sadly passed away. She did some research with research mathematicians. She found that their job was about expanding mathematical knowledge. They solved significant and applied and pure mathematical problems. That's all they did. They solved problems. They never used a textbook. They solved meaningful problems, not just ones that were made up to get to practice something. They did this through being collegial. They worked together. And through this, they found that they had support from each other. Right? So how often do we allow our students to work collegially? To wrestle with mistakes? Right? When we teach mathematics in school, normally we give them some examples, and then we get them to do 50 questions in 50 minutes. What does that tell you? Do 1 question every minute. Do you have time to deeply engage the ideas? I would rather they did 1 question from 1 week, because at least then they're doing mathematics. Yeah, and it's emotional. Mathematicians support each other. They were excited about this. They found it joyful. They found it beautiful, and they would encourage these things. They get excited. I remember at university I had one lecturer, and he did something and with us in class, and he found something he hadn't seen before. He starts going, oh, this is exciting. And we thought it's a bit nutty, but it was great to see him excited by it, because we always thought he was sort of like dry and boring. So here he was, a mathematician, excited about something. But again, Davis and Hirsch are famous mathematics philosophers. They said blindness to the aesthetic element of mathematics is widespread. Maybe not in Indonesia, but certainly in Australia and England. And mathematics can feel as dry as dust and as exciting as a telephone book. Now, for you young ones, in the old days when we had telephones, we used to get delivered to our house this big book with everyone's telephone number in it. We didn't look it up online. So, doesn't matter. So how do mathematicians do this job of developing knowledge, developing the discipline of mathematics? They do it by practicing mathematics. They don't learn somewhere else and bring it back in. They do it they learn and expand knowledge by doing mathematics. And so in that sense, when you're learning mathematics, it's not really a thing. It's just part of practicing. As you practice mathematics, you're learning it at the same time. All right. Now, I don't know about Indonesia, but in Australia, mathematics departments are what we call an endangered species. All right? Because no one is doing mathematics. All right, so I live on the Gold Coast, which is near Brisbane. We have 5 universities. Of those 5 universities, only one has a mathematics department. Only one. And it's always getting smaller because no one is studying mathematics. Anyone who's good at mathematics usually studies engineering or medicine. Because it comes. All right. In my university, there is no mathematics department. There are 3 mathematicians, and they all work in the engineering school or in the psychology school, teaching students maths for engineering or maths and psychology. There is no one studying mathematics. If this continues at this rate, soon in Australia, we will have very few mathematicians. And in fact, in Australia, 4 years ago, we recruited 20,000 mathematicians from overseas because no one studies mathematics in Australia. And mathematics in the universities are almost declining. My daughter did mathematics. She started doing a mathematics degree. After 9 months, she dropped out. She was in a class of 100 students. So that means in Queensland, at least, which is the 3rd biggest area, there was only 100 students studying mathematics in all of Queensland. And she was one of the 100, of which 7 were girls. And when she left, 6. She said, "Dad, I know I'm good at mathematics, but I don't want to do this for the rest of my life." Because the first thing that happened on the first day of her lecture in maths, she did calculus and she did statistical methods. What did they give her? Big textbook. Work through the first 2 chapters. She'd come to a tutorial. There'd be 2 people there to help and almost 100 students, and they never got help. So she said, "I don't want to do this anymore." Where did she learn to dislike mathematics? They taught her at university. So the question has to be, what are the practices of undergraduate mathematics students? Are they the same as high school students? Or are they learning to practice mathematics by engaging in real problems? How do they compare with the work of you as mathematics faculty? How are you stirring them in to become part of the department? Are they doing something similar to what you do? Not the same, because obviously they're still not engaged in the community in the same way. Or are you basically stirring them out? Are you boring them to tears? I don't know. I've never seen it here, but what about maths in the community? Well, of course, not here in Malang, but in Australia, most people think maths is a fixed body of knowledge, and you either know it or you don't. And most people don't. And there's no point trying to learn it because only very intelligent people can learn it anyway. This is good for us because that means we're really intelligent. Mathematics is hard and has no relevance to real life whatsoever. That's what 90% of the people in Australia think. So what do? They avoid it, even though they'll do mathematics every day. And if you ask them about mathematics, if you ask someone to do a maths problem, what do? I've had some start crying. They were so fearful. They'll duck away. For me, if I go to a party, I'm talking to someone and I don't want to talk to them anymore, I just say, oh, I'm a mathematician. They go, okay, bye-bye. So my question is, why do people think that? Why do they think it? This is something they've learned. Where do they learn it? They learned it in my class at school. I taught. And what's the impact on that for the community and society as a whole? Or doesn't it matter? Because if it doesn't matter, we could stop doing what we're doing. So if it matters, we should be worried that this is happening. And what's our part in it? Or is it someone else's problem? Given that we represent mathematics in Malang, right, what could we do differently? Because if we don't do anything differently, what will happen? Exactly the same. I don't know if your numbers are slowly dropping away. Keeps dropping away, you end up with nothing. And we don't need a mathematics department at the university because there's no one to teach. Okay. So some of you are wondering when we're going to get to research methods. Well, the first thing is we've understood and known this problem for years. 50 years we've known that this is what happens in mathematics. We know it's not perceived as a human practice. We already know this. We don't need to research this anymore. You don't need to go out and research and ask students in schools or people in society what they think of mathematics. We already know what that is. And yet we've never changed from what we've been doing. I don't know about you, but in Australia, we've been doing the same thing for 50 years. Every year I go to the conference and there'll be at least 5 papers for saying, oh, children don't like mathematics. They're afraid of it. We already know this. Why are we doing the same thing over and over again? Right? There's an English expression. The definition of stupidity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Because that's exactly what I've been doing for a long time. So we wanted to do something different. So the reason I've gone through all this is the thinking we've been going through to get to this point about, well, we want to find out. We want to do something different. And so we get to the question, what research is required? Now, I deliberately have gone through quite a long route to get to here, because I think that's the important part about getting a good research study. It was at that point we realised we had to take a practice approach, an ontological approach, because all the studies up to now have been epistemological ones and nothing has changed. We have not found anything new for a long time. So this is why we've taken a different approach. We've taken an ontological approach. All that thinking is the part that makes a good study. That stuff up to there took us nearly a year before we've nearly got the study design ready to submit. Because once you do all that thinking, the research design is easy. And then we ask these questions. What do we need to focus on? Where do we need to research, and using what research methods? So these things come after we know what we're doing, what the problem is, and how we're going to try and tackle it in something different. Right? We're not trying to just repeat what's happened before. We're trying to do something different. Now, in Malang, it might be different because you haven't done the years and years necessarily of research that's happened in, say, Australia about kids and maths. I don't know. But if it hasn't happened before, then there may be a point of doing it here, because it's not the same here as what it is in Australia. But in Australia, we've done this for so long, we have to do something different. We are getting the same results and we're not doing anything new. We don't know anything new. We just say the same things over and over again. So that's when I get to research now. So if I'm thinking about research methods, I will think about all these things first. If I've got a student doing a PhD, we will spend 6 months on this stuff before we write the research questions. What do we need to focus on? Now, this is our study. And I want you to see where it's come from and why we're doing it. This doesn't have to be your study, but this is how we did it. After doing all that, we decided we wanted to focus on learning mathematics rather than teaching mathematics. So if you read almost any research, I would say over 95% about mathematics education, or literacy education, or science education, almost none of it is about learning, almost all of it is about teaching. As if teaching makes learning occur. Now, think about this for a moment. What's the hardest thing you've ever had to learn to do? Okay, here's what I reckon the answer would be. 2 things. Learning to walk. Who taught you? Or if you've got your own children, did you teach them? No. You just sort of stood there and every now and then you'd go, come on, come on. You didn't say, right, pick up your right foot, put it in front of you, now pick up your left. So one of the hardest things you learn to do, no one taught you. You learned from the environment, the conditions around it. What's an even harder thing you had to learn to do than learning to walk? Well, learning to talk and communicate. And yet you're all very good at it. Until you were 5 years old, did anyone teach you? No. You just looked at your mum or dad's face and they'd go, mama, mama. And you'd go, well, you might not say mama, I don't know. And eventually they said, no. No one taught you. No one said, put your mouth like this, put your tongue here. We learn almost everything in life without a teacher. So why, when we come to education, do we only think it can be happened by a teacher? So we want to focus, anyway, long story, our research, we want to focus on learning, not the teaching of mathematics. We want to look at the practices of learners as they engage in mathematics. What do they do? What do they say? And how do they relate to each other? How do they relate to mathematics? Because we don't actually know what's going on in their head, we can only guess from what we can see. So we're going to focus on what they do. I have a colleague, doesn't matter, you won't know her name. She said after 100 years of research into education, I think we know almost nothing about learning because all we focus on is teaching, as if they're the same thing. And we also want to look at what are the conditions and arrangement that enable students to learn mathematics. What seems to help? And we're not going to guess, we're going to research it because that's what research is doing. Looking really closely again and again at something until we see it, until we can understand it. All right, so that's what we're going to focus on. Why are we going to focus on that? Because of all that other stuff I've talked about for the last 45 minutes. Where do we need to research? Well, we're going to research it in the sites where people are learning mathematics. So for us, we're not going to send out a survey. We're going to go to where they are. And for me, that will be where I live. Or hopefully, if we can sort something out with your head of department, in Malang, we can come and do it here. But where they are learning mathematics. So probably it'll be in classrooms, but people learn mathematics not just in classrooms. People learn mathematics when they're shopping, when they're at home cooking with their children, when they're playing sport. They're always learning some mathematics. When they're driving, although you have to be a fast learner in Indonesia. I'm not driving. I'm very glad someone else is driving me because people estimate the space to get in. So the other thing is we're not looking for the best practice. We're not looking for the one very best way to learn mathematics ever because we think that'll be different wherever we go. We know there's lots of bad practice, but there's going to be lots of good practice. So we're going to try and find out and understand what works here and now with these students in this place. And in my opinion, it is our responsibility here in Malang to do research that improves and develops mathematics education here and more broadly in Indonesia. No one else can do it except us. If we don't do it, then it'll be the same stuff that probably has come from England or America or somewhere, as if that's the answer. So I think this is our responsibility, and I include myself as part of the member of the faculty. So after all this is when I think, well, how would I do it? The research methods. And when I talk with my doctoral students, I say, this is the easy part. It is now obvious what you have to do because you know what you're looking for. You've answered the hard questions first. Now the easy part is how are we going to do it? All right, so what would I do? Well, I want to do methods that focus on what's happening. How can I understand what's happening? Right. So it has to be something about what's happening. I want to center on people say and do and how they relate to each other. Because mathematics is a human endeavor. It's about people doing and learning mathematics. And I want to capture what are the conditions and arrangements that help that happen. All right, so this sort of arrangement would not be very good for us to develop mathematics as a human practice, because this arrangement says, person at the front, you talk and we listen. We don't do things together. We're not doing mathematics now. But if we really wanted to get into these ideas, we'd be better off to sit together and talk about them more interactively. Maybe we could do that another time. How would we do that? Well, it's probably obvious. The first thing I'd have to do is go and watch. Right. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go into classrooms and watch people learning mathematics. But we're not watching the teacher, we're watching the students. We're going to video here, and then we're going to take it away and look at what they're doing and try and make sense of what they're doing. Right. Now, the problem with doing this is you can never capture it exactly how it is. But it will be better than just asking them, what do you think happened? Right? We want to try and see it. Sometimes when we go into classrooms, we're going to take 5 researchers, sit in different places, video it, maybe put a microphone on students to try and capture what is happening. And it's always very interesting if you've ever done that before. I don't know if you've ever sat in the back of a maths classroom. Someone's teaching. You always see things, a whole lot of different things that you never saw when you used to stand out the front. So we're going to do a lot of observations because we want to see what's happening. We're going to ask questions, but not any old questions. So this could be a questionnaire if we wanted to, or it could be in the interview. But anyway, you want to ask the question, or it could be focus group. But we want to ask them about what happened. All right. Tell me about a time when you were teaching, when you were learning maths and you really enjoyed it. Tell me about the experience. Tell me what happened. Right? Don't tell me what your beliefs are about mathematics. Don't tell me what mathematics you know. Don't give me your theory. Tell me what happened. And that's the sort of questions we will ask. And if you're interested, I can give you, we've done surveys and interviews, and I can show you the sort of questions we were asking. We'll also collect artifacts. So maybe things like the student works on what they wrote when they were in the lesson. We might get the teacher's lesson plan to understand what the teacher was trying to do. We might draw a map of the classroom to see where the children were, those sorts of things. But the artifacts and about the lesson or the learning experience will tell us a lot about what's possible. Right, so if I drew a map of this classroom, I would understand that probably all that's possible is for the teacher to give a lecture. Now, about 2 years ago, I think we had the conference, the Science Maths Education Conference, which I think had every year for a while. I came over one year and did a keynote, and the next year I had to do it online because of COVID. And in that one, I talked about action research. So if you want to, I can send you lots of things, but in my opinion, one of the best ways to do this is what we call action research. Because if we want to work in schools, even if we go there a lot, we come and we go. But it's the teachers who will work there. And so if we can help them to do the research to find out what's happening in their school and how they can do little things to change it, I think that's a really useful way to go. I'm happy to send you more things about that. So some conclusions. On time. Okay, I didn't want to get in there. So, I know you thought this was all about research methods. I think the research methods is the easiest part to do. Once you know what you want to find out and why you want to find it out. So before you think about what your research methods are, you need to clearly understand what the problem is you want to find out. And that won't just be obvious in your head. That will involve talking with others, seeing what other people think. So it's always good to do research with a group of people. And if you're doing a PhD, I hope as scholars you get together and talk about your ideas, even if you're doing different projects. But as faculty, I still think it's important to come together and talk about your projects, talk about what you're doing. Share with each other. If it's just you as a solo person, you've only got one group set of ideas. But if you have more people, it will generate ideas. So really clearly understand what the problem is. For us, in this case, that took us 1 year of talking. Every 2 weeks for 2 hours. Almost every 2 weeks, 2 hours. And we just sit down with our notebooks and we write things down. You need to have a strong theoretical or a philosophical appreciation of the problem. All right, so from our understanding, that's why we talked about practice theory and an ontological perspective. Because we realized, I know there's a lot of research at the moment about cognitive science, but in fact, they can't see what's happening in people's brains. They can only guess from either putting some electrodes on the outside or by what they produce. We don't know what happens in people's brains. So therefore, at least for us, we decided we wanted to look at what we could actually see and appreciate, how people experienced it. What happens between us as we do this activity? And the third thing I think is important if you're doing any education research is it has to improve something. Education is not just a science we study and go, oh, that's interesting. We study it so we can help make it better. And the interesting thing is that it can always be made better because there's never one perfect way of doing it. It always changes depending on where we are. What I did 20 years ago, not work today. How you learnt mathematics when you were at school probably wouldn't work today. And yet what mostly happen in schools? Exactly the same thing that happened 20 years ago. Right? So when I went to school, we used textbooks and the teacher lectured us from the board. Nowadays, teacher lectured us is just through a YouTube clip, and we don't have a textbook, we have worksheets on a computer. It's still the same. So I would do all those things before thinking about my research design. And then once you've done that, the research design and methods will emerge from that thinking. Otherwise, we'll just keep doing what we've already done with no success for the last 50 years. Anyway. Oh, it's gone. Okay, I don't know what's gone. It's gone. That's all right. That was the I'm old and very slow, but I still play. It makes me run. I think if I ever moved to Malang, I'd have to play badminton because you're not very good at volleyball in Malang, in Indonesia. Anyway, anyway, it doesn't matter. So thank you for listening. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Professor Grootenboer. Is there anyone who want to ask question? Pak Siswa? Yeah.
Ya, terima kasih Bu Latifah. Thank you for Mr. Grooten. Grooten. Ya, kita ketemu lagi di Malang beberapa tahun kemarin. Terus ya, langsung ya, translate supaya. Beberapa tahun kemarin sudah ketemu. Langsung translate.
Few years ago, he met you on the conference, I guess. Ya, Pak ya? Di conference. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Kak Lali.
Yeah, you didn't forget Pak Siswa. Yeah, okay.
M. Susiswo. Begini, di Departemen Matematik kita, ya, di Departemen Matematik FIPA Universitas Negeri Malang, itu topik penelitiannya itu penelitian kualitatif, kualitatif.
Yeah, in our Department of Mathematics, the topic of research is mostly about qualitative research.
Terus kebanyakan kita itu meneliti jadi studi kasus ya, kebanyakan.
Yeah, yeah, and
Tentang proses berpikir dan seterusnya.
Yeah, most of the research is about case study and about thinking process,
apa reasoning
and
dan seterusnya. Lah yang itu kendalanya kalau kita submit di jurnal internasional itu seringkali ditolak karena tidak sesuai skop.
The problem is when we try to make a publication for like a journal, and most of the article was rejected.
Ya, terus pertanyaan saya, apakah di Departemen Matematik tetap seperti itu, begitu ya? Penelitiannya pas di kasus, kualitatif lah, ya? Atau kita perlu mengikuti tren penelitian yang sekarang? Umumnya kan mixed method ya, kalau yang diterima di jurnal. Itu saya kira pertanyaan.
Okay.
Terima kasih, thank you.
So, Professor Peter, on your opinion, what should we do in our mathematics department in order to perhaps if we write research or write an article, our article can be accepted?
Yeah.
Should we following the trend of research, or we stay at our qualitative research?
Very important question. So a bit of background. So I think I have I've written 8 books, but I have 110 or something journal articles. That doesn't mean every time I write something it is accepted. I would say almost everything I write gets sent back, major revisions. Some get rejected. Now, this happens to everybody. If you're a new researcher, we all get rejected, first of all. I'll talk about tomorrow. I think that publishing is very political, and you need to choose the right journal. So very few of my publications are in American journals. Americans mostly want quantitative research. So you need to pick your journals very carefully. But it is difficult because often it depends who reads it and what they're looking for. So one of the things, I was the editor of a journal, Merge, Mathematics Education Research Journal. I've now finished. So we get a lot of articles from different countries around the world. if I could say generally, I don't know about from Malang, but generally the ones that came from Southeast Asia would often look like they were trying to repeat what was done in America or Australia, rather than being truly Indonesian or truly Indian. Now, I can only speak generally. So often we would send them back and say, this is very interesting. Can you tell me how this relates to your context? But it is. The hardest part is making sure you choose the right journal. And even then, I had one last week that came back rejected. So all I did was I tidied it up, sent it to a different journal. But there is a big space in mathematics education research for qualitative work in Australia, in the United Kingdom.
Qualitative is MERJ.
Yeah. So that was the one I was editing, but not anymore.
Oh, not anymore.
Yeah. And of that one, I would think 70% would be qualitative or more. But if you have something, I'm happy to read it. And as an adjunct member of the faculty, I'm happy to write with people. Obviously, I can't do hundreds of them, but I'm happy to read and write and help people with their writing. One of the things after my last visit, because you were here last time, we get a maths talk in a different room. I said to Habadin, how can I help? And he said publication. So we started setting up a system to try and help people with publications. And I'm happy. I made videos and a workbook, and I was going to come back and bring someone to help edit them and those sorts of things. And then COVID came, so it didn't happen. But if it's helpful, I'm happy to do that again and help people with publications. I think that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I don't know if anyone's coming tomorrow, but it's more for it's more for doctoral students, I think. But merge at least 70% is qualitative. If it's qualitative, it has to have very strong theory foundation, very strong theory. So some of the ones we used to get a lot from Thailand. They were very interesting, but they had no theory. So they never. That was the hard part with them. But I can't. I would try different journals.
Yeah. Intinya harus pintar memilih jurnalnya ya, Pak ya. Ya, kalau kualitatif. Do you have any suggestion for journal that you suggest to us for a qualitative research?
Well, it depends what it's about. But in Australia, there are two. Merge, which is published by Springer, and is a Q1 journal, and there's another one called, so that's the Mathematics Education Research Journal, published by Merger. That's one option. The second one is called MTED, Mathematics Teacher Education and Development, which is more about teacher development. That is an online journal, not as high ranking but that also is in Australasia. Another way I found if I have a paper I want to write, I will often present it at a conference first. So the Merger Mathematics Education Research Group of Australasia has a conference every year. Next year it's on the Gold Coast in July. And papers there are refereed papers. I would present it there first, and then I would get feedback and make it into a journal article. They also have, so for those of you in maths education, next year is Merger, which is the Mathematics Education Researchers Conference, is in the Gold Coast. I'm hosting, so you have to come and see me.
Hopefully.
And write your papers, even if you're a PhD. It's a good place to write your paper. If you're a PhD student, you come for half price, student person. Then after that is ICME. Do you know what ICME is? International Congress on Mathematics Education in Sydney every 4 years. Next year it's in Sydney. So it's a very good place to make networks with people doing similar things. ICME also has Southeast Asia Conference on Maths Education in between. I don't know where that is, but I've been to that 2 or 3 times. It's always a very good conference as well. So there's some places to start. But if you're not sure, you can talk to Steve and he will contact me and we can find a journal to fit.
Oke, ya, thank you. Ya, seperti itu Pak Seswa.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for hosting me last year.
Baik, mungkin dari peserta yang di sini ada yang ingin bertanya? Boleh terkait dengan yang tadi disampaikan atau bisa jadi terkait dengan research method. Oke, siapa namanya? Nur Ramadan ya, Nur Ramadan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you, Mr. for the knowledge that have you explained. My name is Muhammad Ramadan. I am will be final year student from Math Department. And first of all, I would like to apologize for you to hear my dumb basic question, but I feel like I have to ask this to you because this has bothered me since I am studying at Mathematics Department. So basically, as long as I know and as long as I experience in Mathematics Department, in Math Department, especially in research, the research of mathematics is intercepting with another discipline knowledge, with another knowledge. Like for example, like I actually focusing on mathematical computation, computational mathematical. What is in English? Pokoknya itulah. Nah, it's intercepting with like informatical engineering or computer apa bahasa Inggrisnya? Ya, pokoknya itu. Nah, and in educational mathematics, intercepting in like psychology, like maybe philosophy and etc. So my question is, I hope my question can help me to write down my topic for next year. Okay. So my question is, what is the uniqueness or what can we distinguish or what differentiate mathematics research with another discipline knowledge? Thank you, Mr.
Well, first of all, thank you for your question. It's not a dumb question at all. I think we, in any discipline, there is nothing that is completely unique. Everything is connected, and somewhere we have to chop off other things. So for me, I'm in mathematics and education. So I am mathematics and education. So I have to have a theory that works with both. I'm also not psychology. I am philosophy or sociology. So having a mix is normal and perfect. Mathematics is beautiful in 2 ways. One is, even on its own, with nothing else, it is interesting and fascinating and a way of seeing things which is unique, which means I can talk to other mathematicians even if they don't speak English. We can talk mathematics. So something like Fibonacci sequence, for example, is mind for me that this pattern exists. And it doesn't just exist as a mathematical pattern. I then find it also has things in nature everywhere. So mathematics, one, is interesting just of itself. Not everything has to be useful. So someone who paints art doesn't do a painting because it's useful. They do it because it's beautiful. Someone who does dance doesn't do dance because it's useful. So I think we have to accept and believe that mathematics has a beauty of its own. But the very interesting thing about mathematics is it is always useful, which is why we always end up with mathematics and computer analytics, mathematics and biology, mathematics and physics, mathematics and business, because mathematics helps us solve lots of other things. So mathematics, unlike anything else, is beautiful and interesting, but it is powerful because it is always useful. So I would always think that if you are combining it with other things, that's a very good thing to do, because that is the very nature of what mathematics does. And in fact, sometimes around the world, do any of you know of the Field Prize? The Field Prize is given to the best mathematician every year. And about 10 years ago, it was given to a mathematician in the United States who understood tying knot theory. It had nothing to do with tying knots or anything like that. It was only about the theory. He only studied a mathematical theory. He wrote a beautiful thing, won the prize. The next year, he met with a colleague, just a friend. They used to play racquetball together, who was from the genetics department. And they were talking about the research. All of a sudden, they found that his knot theory solves the other person's DNA problem. So mathematics is always useful somewhere. Calculus was invented as a purely mathematical thought. Now, it's very useful because the police use it to calibrate their speed guns to give me a ticket and make money for the government. So it's always useful, and it just means you have to be very clear about the twin philosophical or theoretical foundations of what you do. And then when you send it off to examination, if it's strong in mathematics or other area, make sure your supervisors choose an examiner who understands. I don't know if I've answered your question very well, but thank you.
Nggak ada, sudah. Oke, terima kasih. No feedback. Oke, ada yang lain yang ingin bertanya? Is there any one who wants to ask? Pak Doni? Pak Deni apa Pak Doni ya? Lupa saya. Pak Deni. Ayo Pak Deni, mau bertanya Pak Deni. Boleh dalam bahasa Indonesia, boleh dalam bahasa Inggris. Saya prefer yang kedua sih.
I'm here till Friday anyways. If I have a question later, you can ask the boss and he will ask me. Yeah.
Baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Introduce my name is Denny Hamdani. My is doctoral student in Departemen Matematika, State University of Malang. Saya agar lebih powerly, saya ingin bertanya pakai bahasa Indonesia aja, Bu. Saya beberapa hari lalu saya pernah membaca paper terkait Prof. Peter Grootenboer terkait dengan mental computation strategy. Ya, mental computation strategy. Di sana itu di dalam proses mental itu dia melakukan identifikasi dan melakukan evaluasi dalam proses perhitungan pecahan gitu di anak-anak SD. Kemudian di dalam mental ini ada istilah namanya flexibility dan efisiensi gitu. Nah, maksud saya apakah di dalam framework yang namanya mental strategi, mental competence strategi itu bisa diterapkan pada tingkat mahasiswa gitu. Terutama karena beberapa hari lalu saya coba melakukan penelitian terkait dengan pembuktian, karena pembuktian itu perlu ada lakukan identifikasi dan evaluasi. Demikian.
So he already read about your article about mental computation strategy. Is that correct? Yeah, mental computation strategy on fraction. Yeah, mental computation strategy. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, identifying, maaf Pak. Identifying and evaluating upper primary school students mental computation strategy. Yeah. Okay. And his question is this framework could be implemented for graduate studies? Because he also a lecturer. Yeah. So.
Okay, so Tracy Reader is a PhD student. She's my PhD student, and she also teaches in a school. So her area of interest is mental computation. So this is her study, and I'm there to help her. It is not, it's not using this theory framework. It's using a different one. So it's very practical. I think it's useful, but the thing about, so she's very interested in their mental computation. The question I keep asking her is, how do you know what their mental strategy is? You can only tell from what they write down. So she has investigated what students have written down. So she's doing a PhD at the moment. She's a very good PhD student. This paper she presented at the Merger conference this year as a PhD student. So you should, it's a good place for PhD students to present their research. If you're going to do it, let me know, because I'll help you with your paper. But it is a good, I think it is a good framework. It's not finished yet. She still has a year and a half to go. She works full-time in a school and do a PhD as well. But I think it's a very good framework to help understand some of the ways students are thinking. But she does have to guess what they're thinking based on what they write down.
So is it could be implemented if he wants to conduct research on undergraduate students, the framework? Yeah, it's possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Incidentally, what I would do if I was in your position, if you were doing a PhD or another study and you read someone else's work and you like it, you should write to them, email, because they will send you things. So I sit in my office and every now and then I get an email from someone saying, oh, I'm doing a study and I'm using this paper you wrote. And I sit there going, oh, someone's read my paper. What can I do to help? Now, if they don't reply, you lose nothing, but most people will reply back to you, even if you think they're very famous, like, well, Freudenthal's not here anymore, but someone, you should write to them an email and ask them.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Ada feedback, Pak Devi? Oh, he wants to ask you about collaboration research with you. Is it possible?
Yeah, depends what we're doing. That's my job. I work here.
Okay.
I've already talked to your head of department and he's working out how we can do it.
Ya, nanti bisa dikoordinasikan dengan Pak Latiful, Pak. Ya, selaku ketua departemennya yang mungkin bisa mengkoordinasi, begitu ya, Pak ya. Oke. Terima kasih, Pak Denny. Ada lagi yang mau ditanyakan, Pak? Any other question? Okay. Again, about the publication on journal. So he asked about the research methodology. What do you think about the research methodology that perhaps could you suggest? Tapi bisa semua mahasiswa sebenarnya saya. Could you give any suggestion about research methodology that should he implemented on his research in order to get published on a journal?
Okay, so as an editor in a journal, I don't mind what research methodology you use, as long as there is a clear connection. Here is the problem. Here is the literature on that problem. Here is the theory about helps with that problem. Here is the methodology that helps me understand that problem. Here is the data in answer to the research questions about that problem. Here is the discussion and theorizing based on the data, based on the theory. The journal articles which are difficult to publish are the ones that go research problem, methodology, literature review. So it's not so much which methodology you use, it's about being coherent and consistent. So that's why for me it's important to do this first, and then the methods generally take care of themselves. The other thing often that a study will get not published is sometimes it's too small. So they do a survey and they send it to 20 people. There's no statistical significance in their findings. So I've had quantitative studies where they didn't do any statistical analysis beyond descriptive statistics. No one will publish that. It's too simple. But research methodology, the main thing is it's consistent with what you're doing. So if you say you're doing an investigation of students' thinking, and then you interview teachers, we would say that doesn't match. If you're doing student thinking, you have to research with students. That's a short answer to a complex question.
Thank you, Profesor Peter. Pada intinya Pak Denny harus koheren gitu ya antara literatur reviewnya, kemudian masalahnya sama riset metodologi risetnya itu harus koheren. Itu pada dasarnya syarat untuk bisa dipublikasikan pada jurnal. Itu sih masukannya beliau. Jadi nggak ada yang disarankan. Sarannya itu tadi ada koherensi gitu ya di dalam artikelnya. Gitu ya. Thank you, Profesor Peter. Ada yang ingin bertanya yang lain? Prof Purwanto, nggih.
Thank you. Some people, some teachers, maybe we sometimes try to understand what student think, what student understand, what student don't understand. We try to know what student understand, what to don't understand, and so on. But we cannot see it like what you mentioned before, that we just can see from what student do, what student practice. My question is, are there many research about how close the teacher interpretation or our interpretation about what student understand, what student think from what they do or what they practice? Thank you.
Yeah, Prof, could you understand about the question? How close? How close ya Pak?
Oh, how close? Yeah.
How close our interpretation of teacher interpretation about what student understand, what student think, don't understand from what we see in their practice and what they do.
Yes, I understand. So the truth is, we can never know exactly but we can know better if we look closely at what they've done or what they produce. And sometimes I've made terrible mistakes with students because I would look too quickly and I made a judgment about what they think. So I have a student who makes an error. And then I say, oh, it's wrong, they don't understand. But if I looked more closely at what they've done, I might see, oh, actually they do understand, but just here they did one small calculation error. But in fact, they do understand what's happening. So to me, it's about looking more closely about what they do and then asking them to do things or tell you about what they've done. I had students and we used to have to say, you have to show us you're working out. So you'd give them a problem, there was a space, they had to show they're working out, and then they had to write the answer. Now, the problem for most students was they would look at the question, they would write down the answer, and then they'd go and make up the working out in between because they didn't actually need it. They were only doing it because they lost marks. So rather, I would sometimes say to them, here's a question and here's the answer. Show me how you could get there. And that way they had to show me what their thinking was and how they could practice getting towards what they understood. I found that was much more useful because otherwise the goal became all about the answer. And then I could say, why did you do that? And they could tell me. Now, the problem, of course, this is much more time consuming, but when we were researching with students, this is what we can do. That research that you're referring to before with Tracy Reader, she would get them a question, she'd get them to talk about their answer, and then she'd ask them why they did things. So it is always mediated by language, whether written or said. But at least it's closer than just me guessing from what the question and the answer is and assuming what happens in between. So that's why I try and get them to talk about what they did, why they did it, what helped them do it. I don't know if that is clear. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah. Okay, question from our head.
Oh, this will be a hard one.
Before I propose some question, maybe I want to respond to Dennis' question or remark about potential collaboration research between student from Mathematics Department and with Professor Peter. Professor Peter is adjunct professor of Mathematics Department. So it is possible to be a co-supervisor, external examiner, or co-author of a student's article. So it's why in this moment, I want to propose some ideas about what kind of collaboration that we can be done in the future. For instance, there are some more than 30 doctoral students here, and one of compulsory to be graduate in doctoral program, they should submit an article, journal article. So I hope you are able to review the article that written by student, or you can be one of the co-author of the article. And the other one is in this department, especially the doctoral program, it is difficult to differentiate the quality of the doctoral thesis or master thesis regarding the scope of the study. I mean, the design of the study. If the design is action research, what should be done in the study. It should be develop a theory, or just describe the student's thinking related to some cases or related to some case of the subject, or the dissertation of doctoral program should be grounded theory. My question is, could you explain the clear boundaries between action research, phenomenological research, and grounded theory? Thank you.
Okay, I'll do the last question first because I remember it. So action research is about making a change. You are not going in to just see something. You are part of trying to change something. So in an action research study, there will be something which will be brought up by the participants more than necessarily you, unless you are part of the action research. They will start something, they will collect some evidence, they will reflect on it, then they will devise the second thing they want to do in response to what's happened. And it will be going on like this. So you don't know what's going to happen at the end until you get there, because it will depend what's happened along the way, because you are trying to change something in response to evidence. That's action research. In phenomenological research, you are looking at what people's experiences are. So this research I've talked about today is phenomenological in nature. We want to know what people have experienced. So in phenomenological research, you are only going to describe it. And what would happen in phenomenological research is I would interview as many people as I need to, asking to them to describe it in rich detail, what happened when. And then my job is to try and look across all those and see what is in common. So if it was the phenomenology of learning mathematics, I would have to interview many people who've learned mathematics, and every time I would try and find what they call the essence of that experience is. No one's no one's looking. It's all right. Don't. And then when I would stop interviewing people when I keep getting the same answers all the time, that would be phenomenology. So, and after that, I would then say the phenomenon of learning mathematics is this, and I would describe it. I only describe it. Grounded theory research, if you're doing a true grounded theory research, you would collect the evidence, and as you collect it, you would start theorizing about it through coding and things like that. You'd develop an initial theory to explain it, then you'd collect more evidence to see if it's the same, then you'd develop another theory. So your job is to not to just describe it, but to explain what it is you're looking at. Now, most people who do grounded theory research don't do grounded theory. They use grounded theory methods. But in the end, they don't come up with a theory about why something happened. So that would be a short version of what the difference of the three is. The first part is what could we do together? So as you've said, I'm an adjunct member of the faculty here. So I'm not just a visitor, I'm part of the team. And of course, I'm happy to work with, and particularly mediated through you and the secretary. I obviously can't work with everybody, but I can do some things. And you need to work out what's the best way I can help. So I'm happy to read people's articles and give you feedback. I'm happy to write with you if it helps. What I don't want to do is you do a whole article and then you put my name on the end as if I've done any work. If I haven't done any work, I don't need it. Right? But sometimes if I can help write it, and if my name's at the end, it helps because people know my name. It might get read by more people. But I don't want to get just put on because you feel you have to, because I'm here. I'm not, I don't need more publications. My job is to help others. So within what's possible, I'm committed to coming back as hopefully once a year, hopefully for a bit longer than this time, if there's something for me to do. I'm not coming here just for a holiday. I've come to do work. And giving talks is okay, but I think it's more useful to do things with people. So tomorrow, that's why I'm working with doctoral students about writing. If you're not coming tomorrow, that's fine. With Haberdin, I've initially started developing some videos about writing journal articles, and they're all on YouTube, and we can give you all the links to those if you want to look at them. They're not very exciting, but it just gives you some ideas if it helps. But that's up to you. I know you're busy as well, so I'll get the secretary to do it because he hasn't got anything to do. But I'm here to help, not.
Okay, Professor, one question more from the chat room of Zoom. So there is a question from Pak Aib. Sorry. Yeah. From Pak Arif Sabta Mandala. The question is, may I inquire about how to effectively manage situation? Panjang banget ya, mana itu? Okay. Yeah, you could answer.
So one of the things about a PhD or any study is when you start, you have to have some research questions. And then you go out and you collect some data, and then you come back and you answer the research questions. The problem is sometimes while you're collecting the data, you find out nothing about one of your research questions, but you find out lots of things about something else. So this is what my suggestion is. You go back and change your research question. That's what I would do. Because as you go along, this is not cheating or doing anything wrong. You're just being responsive to what you found out. So sometimes you might have 3 questions and you end up with really good data about 2 of them, and the third one you end up with no data. Then I would say just get rid of the question. Because it doesn't just go, topic, literature, theory, methodology, data, findings. You start like that, but then once you get to that point, you get your findings, you have to go back and do your literature again, because there'll be something you found out that wasn't in your literature. So you have to put it in, and there'll be something in your literature that you have to take out. And your research questions, it's okay to change them at the end. It's a back and forth process. It's not just it's not just from start to finish. So it's a really good discussion, Arif, to have with your supervisors as you go through. But in my opinion, it's always something you change. The title of your study, you start with the title. By the time you finish, you have a different title. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you, Professor Peter. Unfortunately, our time is limited.
It's lunchtime.
Yeah, okay. You may sit. Thank you. Honorable participants, we are finally come to the end of the lecture. We would like to say thank you again to Professor Peter Grootenboer for his active and interesting talk today. Thank you again for audience for your active participation. Hopefully the presentation will be beneficial for everyone. Good afternoon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And I will pass the time back to our MC, Ms. Nala. Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Peter.
As we approach the end of this enlightening session, I would like to express our sincerest gratitude to Professor Peter Grootenboer for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. And thank you so much for Ms. Latifah Mustafa Listianto, SSI MPD, for guiding the lecturing and Q&A session. Once again, thank you, Professor Peter Grootenboer, for your insight have been invaluable, and we are truly grateful for your time and dedication. Before we conclude, let's capture this memorable moment with a group photo. I kindly request Professor Peter Grootenboer, Mr. Latiful Anwar, SSI, MSc, PhD, and all lecturers to join us in front of the stage for a group photo. To all students, you have to stay on your seat. Once again, I would like to express my deepest appreciation to Professor Peter Grootenboer and Mathematics Department of Malang State University, and all of you for being a part of this exceptional guest lecture. May the knowledge shared today inspire us to reach new heights and make a positive impact in our respective fields. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.